Fort Bragg, in space. Cassandra Cass Reynolds had always considered herself a problem solver. That was, after all, why she was no longer in the United States Space Marine Corps. It turned out that some problems, like say a high-ranking general's billion-credit pleasure yacht, could indeed be solved with a well-placed training grenade. The Marine brass had not appreciated her innovative thinking. Now she was a freelancer, a free agent, a galactic entrepreneur, if you asked her, a fugitive if you asked anyone with a badge, which brought her here, to a rusted-out dive bar orbiting Jupiter's third moon, surrounded by the kind of company that made standard marine discipline look like a kindergarten etiquette class. It was the perfect place to assemble a team for a job so stupid, so reckless, that only a bunch of ex-Marines would even consider it. Cass set her whiskey glass down and leaned forward. "All right, listen up, degenerates. We're gonna rob the Galactic Republic of tyrannical bureaucrats." Sergeant Maria Boomer Vasquez, demolition expert and lifelong pyromaniac, raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Which part? The part where they run the whole galaxy into the ground, or the part where they store enough paperwork to block out a sun?" "Their high-security weapons vault," Cass clarified, grinning. "Inside planet IRS 1776. A collective groan went around the table. Even in the far reaches of space, IRS 1776 was infamous, a planet-sized repository of forms, regulations, and bureaucratic nightmares, guarded not by lazy rent-a-cops, but by actual regulation-following Marines. Lance Corporal Doug Doom Patterson was the first to speak, and predictably, the first to sound completely unconcerned. "That's a terrible idea," he said. Then, after a brief pause, "I'm in." Boomer shrugged. "Sure. Why not? I've been meaning to test my new plasma charges. I call them mildly unwise and catastrophic failure." Cass turned to the final member of the crew, a jittery engineer named Huxley, who was already sweating. "Hux, you in?" I mean, sure," Huxley stammered. "I just need to be clear. We're talking about breaking into an active military vault on the most heavily regulated planet in the universe, guarded by the only people more stubborn than us." "Yep," Cass said cheerfully. Huxley exhaled and nodded. "Okay, sure. Yeah, why not?" Cass leaned back, satisfied. "All right. The plan is simple. We infiltrate as an official inspection team from the Intergalactic Plumbing Authority." Boomer frowned. "Plumbing? Think about it," Cass said, waving a hand. "Bureaucrats don't know how anything works. Someone shows up with a clipboard and says, 'Hey, we need to check your quantum sewage flux capacitors.' They just assume the paperwork was filed. We walk right in." "And then?" Doug asked. "Then we find the Omni key." A hush fell over the group. Even in the chaos of interstellar crime, the Omni key was the stuff of legend, a pre-human alien artifact that could allegedly unlock anything. It was stored under maximum security on IRS 1776, buried under enough red tape to strangle a planet. If they stole it, they'd be rich beyond belief. Cass grinned. "We get in, grab the key, and get out before the GRTB even knows what hit them." Doug raised a hand. "What if they do know what hit them?" "Then we improvise," Cass said. 2 days later, Cass stood outside the towering entry gates of the IRS 1776 high-security vault, wearing a stolen technician's uniform, an oversized badge, and an expression of extreme confidence. Behind her, Doug, Boomer, and Huxley stood in equally stolen uniforms, trying their best to look like competent government employees. It wasn't going well. The Marine standing at the checkpoint squinted at their credentials. He was built like a concrete bunker, and he had the expression of a man who took paperwork as seriously as religion. Cass smiled. "Routine inspection. We're from the Intergalactic Plumbing Authority. Headquarters sent us over." The Marine's eyes narrowed. "I wasn't told about any plumbing inspection." "That's because you're not on the need-to-know list, Corporal." Cass glanced at his name tag. Tuggerson. That's Gunnery Sergeant Tuggerson. Cass winced theatrically. Oof, that explains it. That's a lieutenant-level only dispatch. Bureaucracy, am I right? You know how it is. Tuggerson frowned. Still, I don't see any records of... Before he could finish, Doug made a fatal mistake. You dare question Lieutenant Admiral Supreme Patterson? He blurted out. Cass closed her eyes. Huxley audibly groaned. Boomer muttered, Oh, for Tuggerson's face darkened. Lieutenant, Admiral, Supreme? Doug nodded enthusiastically. That's right. I was just promoted. Really big deal. There was a beat of silence. Then, all hell broke loose. Klaxons blared, automated defenses activated. A small, hovering drone appeared from the ceiling, demanding that everyone stand by for immediate compliance processing. Cass didn't hesitate. She swung her fist into Tuggerson's jaw, grabbed Doug by the collar, and yelled, Run! The four of them took off down the corridor as sirens wailed behind them. This was not the plan. Huxley shrieked as they sprinted past confused bureaucrats and low-level security officers. I improvised, Cass shot back. Doug, panting, grinned. Classic. A barrage of stapler rounds fired past them. Automated security chairs sprouted. Tiny railguns, attempting to subdue the intruders. Boomer pulled out a grenade, grinning ear to ear. I think it's time to introduce these bureaucrats to catastrophic failure. Cass sighed. Screw it. Send it. Boomer lobbed the grenade behind them. A perfectly timed explosion rocked the hallway, sending paperwork flying in every direction. A digital voice overhead announced, Attention, you have activated Protocol 13B. You are now required to watch a mandatory 4-hour safety briefing. Team turned a corner and ran straight into a massive conference room filled with government officials. A projector screen at the front flickered to life. An emotionless hologram appeared. Welcome to the Intergalactic Workplace Hazard Prevention Seminar. Please take your seats. The doors locked behind them. Cass stared at the screen, then at the sea of unimpressed bureaucrats. Then at her team. Doug raised a tentative hand. Do we watch the video? Cass took a deep breath. We might have to. Huxley whimpered. Boomer checked her explosives. Doug sat down. Cass cracked her knuckles. The heist had barely begun, and it was already spiraling into chaos. Just another day in the life. The hologram on the screen flickered, its synthetic voice droning with the same enthusiasm as a malfunctioning dishwasher. Welcome to the Intergalactic Workplace Hazard Prevention Seminar. Please remain seated for the entirety of this presentation. Failure to comply will result in mandatory retraining. Cass took a slow, measured breath through her nose. Across from her, a dozen bureaucrats in drab gray uniforms sat with vacant expressions, resigned to their fates. A few had already settled. In with data tablets, preparing for the long, soul-draining experience ahead. Boomer leaned over. I say we blow the door and make a run for it. Too many witnesses, Cass muttered. We need a distraction. Doug was already halfway into his seat, elbows on the table, watching the screen like he was actually interested. Guys, we could just watch the video. Cass, Boomer, and Huxley turned in unison to glare at him. Doug shrugged. Look, I'm just saying, do you know how much actual training I had in the Corps? I kind of want to see what I've been missing. Before Cass could respond, the hologram continued. In today's seminar, we will review the proper safety procedures for handling high-risk office supplies, such as self-healing paperwork, quantum, filing cabinets, and the Mark 7 automated stapler turret system. Huxley paled. I knew those staplers were armed. Cass glanced around, eyes scanning for any possible exit. No doors, no windows. Just a solid, sterile conference room with reinforced walls designed for maximum boredom containment. Maybe. Doug's onto something, she said. Boomer blinked. What? Cass smirked. We don't fight the system, we drown in it. She stood, put on her best concerned employee face, and raised her hand. Excuse me? The hologram flickered. Question acknowledged. Please remain seated until the appropriate Q&A section at the conclusion of this briefing. Cass didn't sit. Yeah, see, here's the thing. I actually have so many safety concerns. The bureaucrats, conditioned by years of regulatory compliance, perked up slightly. A few even adjusted their glasses. Intrigued, Cass pressed forward. First of all, I don't see any designated emergency stapler override codes posted anywhere in this room. That's a major violation of Intergalactic Safety Standard 14 Delta. A collective murmur spread through the bureaucrats. Several of them started flipping through their data pads. Cass continued. Second, your self-healing paperwork. Is there a protocol in place for countersigning forms that regenerate mid-signature? Because if not, you might be creating infinite bureaucratic loops. Huxley gasped. Oh my God, that's genius. The hologram processed this. That concern has been noted. Please remain seated. Boomer stood up, crossing her arms. You're telling me this facility doesn't have an interdepartmental hazard mitigation subcommittee? One of the bureaucrats gasped audibly. Another furiously typed something into a datapad. Cass bit back a grin. Bureaucrats didn't fear war. They feared procedural inefficiency. The room was in chaos within seconds. Someone at the far end was already drafting a formal complaint about the missing stapler override codes. Another had started an emergency review of the facility's filing redundancy policy. Cass leaned toward Huxley. While they're filing that paperwork, we're getting out of here. Huxley nodded, gripping his stolen clipboard like a lifeline. I have never been more terrified or more impressed. The hologram tried to regain control, its voice rising slightly in volume. Attention. Failure to comply with this seminar will result in disciplinary action. It was too late. The bureaucrats were fully activated. A woman in the front row stood, face red with indignation. You can't just skip safety protocols, another joined in. This entire facility could be in violation of galactic occupational compliance. Laws! Cass grabbed Doug and Huxley by the collars and started pulling them toward the door. Boomer followed, casually flipping a detonator in her hand, just in case things went sideways. A security drone descended from the ceiling, scanning the room. Unauthorized personnel detected. Please submit Form 489B for security review. Cass grabbed a datapad off the nearest table and started typing furiously. It didn't matter. What she wrote. Bureaucrats only needed something to look official. She filled out half the form, scrawled a fake signature, and uploaded it to the system. The drone hesitated, its red light blinking. Form 489B submitted. Processing. Cass pushed through the doors before it could change its mind. They bolted into the hallway, alarms still blaring behind them. All right, Cass huffed. That went well. Huxley wheezed. Define well? Doug was grinning. I almost learned something back there. Boomer shoved a fresh power cell into her plasma launcher. Where to now, boss? Cass pulled up the blueprint of the facility on her wrist pad. We get to the vault before they lock it down. They sprinted through the halls, weaving past confused clerks and panicked security officers. Ahead, a squad of actual space marines rounded the corner, rifles raised. Cass didn't stop. She grabbed the nearest rolling office chair, hopped onto it, and launched herself full speed at the lead marine. The chair slammed into him, sending him sprawling. His squad hesitated, just long enough for Boomer to drop a flashbang at their feet. A blinding whoomp of light and sound filled the corridor. By the time the Marines recovered, Cass and her crew were already through the next door, locking it behind them. The vault was just ahead. Huxley skidded to a stop at the terminal. Give me 2 minutes. You have 30 seconds, Cass corrected. Doug was already setting up a defensive position. So, we got company. Down the hall, more he. Marines were approaching. Huxley cursed under his breath. All right, bypassing the system now. Cass turned to Boomer. Boomer, got anything fun? Boomer grinned and pulled out a set of shaped charges. Always, Cass smirked. Good, because I have a feeling Major Burney is about to show up. As if summoned by sheer misfortune, a voice boomed over the intercom. "Cassandra Reynolds!" Cass groaned. "Ugh, there he is." Major Bernard "Bernie" Jenkins's voice carried the weight of an entire career spent chasing Cass through one bureaucratic disaster after another. "You are under arrest for 19 counts of unauthorized property damage, 7 counts of grand larceny, and 1 count of really pissing me off." Cass casually flipped off the nearest security camera. Huxley shouted, "Got it!" and the vault doors hissed open. Inside, bathed in a soft glow, sat the Omnikey. Cass stepped forward, plucked it from its pedestal, and examined the small, sleek device. It hummed to life. A voice, dry and unimpressed, spoke. "Oh, great. Another idiot." Cass blinked. Did the key just talk?" Omnikey sighed. "This is going to be so annoying." Behind them, the doors burst open. Cass shoved the key in her pocket. "Run?" Doug asked. Cass grinned. "Run." Cass didn't wait to see what kind of heavily armed reception Major Bernie had arranged for them. The moment the Omnikey was in her pocket, she turned and bolted, already barking orders. "Doug, find us a way out. Boomer, delay them." Doug was already scanning his wrist pad. "There's a maintenance hatch 2 halls over, leads to the secondary loading dock." Boomer cracked her knuckles and pulled out a handful of grenades. "Do you want mild inconvenience, moderate property damage, or completely unhinged chaos?" Cass didn't even hesitate. "Unhinged chaos, obviously." Boomer beamed, primed 3 charges, and lobbed them into the vault entrance. The concussive blast hit a second later, sending a shockwave through the facility. The lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the ventilation system coughed out a plume of smoke and fiery sparks. Cass took off running with the team as the vault doors slammed shut behind them, temporarily sealing off Major Bernie's forces. "That'll buy us 60 seconds, Boomer said, sprinting beside her. "Make it 90 and I'll buy you a drink," Cass replied. 2 drinks, and I'll throw in a distraction," Cass grinned. "Deal." Doug led them down a winding maze of sterile white hallways, his stolen clearance codes just barely keeping the security doors from locking them in. Huxley was sweating bullets, his fingers flying over his datapad. "I swear, this facility has more redundancies than a government pension fund." They turned a corner and nearly crashed into a squad of armored Marines. The lead Marine, a mountain of a man in full combat gear, took one look at them and bellowed, "Freeze!" Cass sighed. You'd think after all these years, they'd stop asking me to do that. Before the Marines could raise their weapons, Boomer chucked her last explosive into the hallway. A sudden boom ripped through the facility, followed by a burst of fire-retardant foam from the emergency suppression systems. The hallway instantly transformed into a slippery, chaotic mess of smoke, alarms, and confused shouting. Cass skidded forward, using the foam like an ice rink. Doug, meanwhile, misjudged his footing and went down hard, sliding past Cass on his back like an upside-down turtle. "Oh, crap! Oh, crap!" Cass grabbed his arm at the last second, hauling him up just as they reached the maintenance hatch. Boomer wrenched it open. A ladder descended into darkness. Cass was already climbing down. They emerged in a dimly lit loading dock filled with abandoned supply crates and the low hum of idling cargo haulers. The massive exit doors were closed, but a service airlock on the far side of the bay looked promising. Doug sprinted ahead, reaching for the control panel. "If I can override the lockdown, we can take that airlock straight to the landing pads." Cass turned to Huxley. "How much time before Bernie breaks through?" Huxley glanced at his datapad and winced. Probably right about..." The vault doors upstairs exploded. Cass groaned. "Damn it, Bernie," a voice crackled over the loudspeakers. "Reynolds, I swear to God, if you don't surrender right now..." Cass cut him off by shooting the speaker. The door to the maintenance lift dinged. "Here they come," Boomer called. Cass took cover behind a stack of crates. "Doug, what's the holdup?" Doug's fingers flew over the panel. "The damn system wants authorization." Cass yanked the Omnikey from her pocket. "Hey, magic key. Want to be useful?" The device pulsed to life. "Oh, great. it said in a voice that sounded exactly like a DMV clerk at the end of their shift. Another reckless idiot using me for crime. Cass gritted her teeth. Open the damn door. The Omni-Key sighed dramatically, then clicked. The airlock door hissed open. Cass turned to the others. Go! Boomer and Huxley bolted through first. Doug stumbled in after them. Cass covered their retreat, laying down suppressive fire as a squad of Marines poured into the loading dock, weapons blazing. Bernie himself stormed in behind them, his face red with rage. You're not getting away again, Reynolds, Cass smirked, backing toward the airlock. Oh, Bernie, sweet, angry Bernie, you say that every time. Then she kicked the closest supply crate into the path of an approaching Marine, dove through the airlock, and slammed her fist onto the emergency override. The door sealed just as Bernie lunged forward. Cass leaned against the wall, catching her breath as the airlock cycled. Doug grinned. That went way better than expected. Huxley let out a hysterical laugh. We barely made it, Boomer nudged Cass. So about that drink. Cass was about to respond when a deep mechanical thud rumbled through the station. She frowned. That didn't sound like normal lockdown. Procedures. The Omni-Key let out a tired groan. Oh no, it muttered. Cass narrowed her eyes. What now? The key hesitated. Then, you know how everyone assumes I unlock things? Cass felt her stomach drop. You don't unlock things? Oh, I do, the key admitted. But mostly, I was built to lock something away. Boomer stiffened. Define something? The key hesitated. Then the station shook. Alarms screamed as power flickered across the facility. A distorted, guttural voice echoed over the intercom, low, ancient, and wrong. Cass felt the hair on her. Arms rise. The Omni-Key let out a nervous chuckle. Well, it said, you just woke up the end of the world. Cass barely had time to register what the Omni-Key had just said before the entire facility trembled beneath her feet. The overhead lights flickered, sputtered, and then dimmed to an eerie red glow as emergency protocols kicked in. Across the station, sirens blared with an urgency that was far worse than the usual unauthorized personnel-detected alarms. This wasn't a lockdown. This was something bigger. Doug, still catching his breath, looked at the ceiling as if it had personally offended him. Did that thing just say we woke up the end of the world? The Omni-Key let out a noise somewhere between a sigh and a resigned chuckle. I mean, technically yes, but let's not get bogged down in the details. Cass grabbed the device and shook it. Oh no, we're getting very bogged down in details. What the hell did we just unleash? The station shuddered again, this time harder, like something massive was shifting deep beneath its foundations. The air grew thick, and for the first time in her life, Cass felt something she rarely ever did, a creeping sense of dread. The intercom crackled to life. But it wasn't Bernie's voice this time. No, this was something ancient, something cold. A voice that crawled down her spine like an icy knife. Awakened. At last. Doug audibly gulped. Nope. I hate that. I hate everything about that. Huxley frantically tapped on his wrist pad, scrolling through every available security feed. Guys, we might have a problem. Cass turned to him, still gripping the key. We already have a problem. Huxley rotated his screen so the team could see. The security footage showed the lower levels of the station, deep storage sectors no one ever talked about. Giant containment doors were trembling, their reinforced locks unraveling as if something inside was flexing for the first time in centuries. Then, without warning, the doors exploded outward. From the smoke and wreckage, something moved. A silhouette. Impossibly large, its form shifting like it couldn't decide on a single shape. Its eyes, if they were eyes, flared like burning stars, and when it turned toward the security camera, the entire feed cut out. Boomer took a step back. Nope. That's some ancient horror crap. I don't mess with ancient horrors. Doug clutched his head. So we didn't steal a key. We stole a lock, and now the thing it was keeping trapped just got out. Cass clenched her jaw. We need to get off this station. Now. Boomer gestured at the airlock. We were literally about to do that before. The evil space demon started monologuing. Cass activated the airlock control. The outer doors slid open, revealing the vast docking bay where their stolen stealth shuttle, which turned out to be very visible, was parked. It was also surrounded. Dozens of Space Marines, weapons raised, stood between them and the ship. And at the front of it all, Major Bernard Bernie Jenkins looked like he was having the worst day of his life. "Cassandra Reynolds," he bellowed, his voice hoarse from yelling. "Stand down, hand over the key, and explain to me why the Station is coming apart." Cass raised a finger. "Okay, funny story." Then the wall behind Bernie burst inward. The Marines didn't even have time to scream. A wave of writhing black mass, half shadow, half nightmare, engulfed them, lifting bodies into the air as weapons discharged wildly. The entity coiled and twisted, reshaping itself with each second, flickering between monstrous forms. And then, as if sensing the Omni-Key, it turned its many-eyed gaze directly at Cass. For the first time in her life, she hesitated. Bernie, covered in the blood of his fallen squad, staggered to his feet. He turned, took one look at the nightmare beast towering behind him, and then back at Cass. For a moment, he seemed like he was about to demand her arrest again. Then he growled, "Oh, screw this," and started shooting. The gunfire barely slowed the thing down, but it was enough of a distraction. Cass didn't hesitate this time. She grabbed Doug by the collar, shoved Huxley forward, and yelled, "Run!" Boomer tossed a cluster of grenades over her shoulder as they sprinted toward the ship. The resulting explosion barely even fazed the entity, but it sent shattered crates and debris flying in every direction, buying them precious seconds. Doug leaped into the cockpit. "Engines hot, doors closing, let's go, let's go, let's go," Cass slammed into the co-pilot seat as the shuttle lurched off the docking pad. Huxley, still hyperventilating, yelled from the back. "It's still coming. It's moving like a gravity well." The proximity alarm screamed as the horror spread its form outward, tendrils of inky blackness lashing toward the ship. Cass turned to the Omni-Key. "All right, you smart-mouthed little brick. If you were made to lock things, then tell me how we put that thing back in its box." The key sighed. "It's a long process involving ancient rituals, a power source strong enough to bend reality, and preferably an entire fleet." Cass clenched her fists. "We have none of that." "Well," the key said dryly, "then you're probably going to die." Cass slammed her fist on the dashboard. "Not helpful." Boomer suddenly snapped her fingers. "Wait, what if we launch it into a sun?" The key scoffed. "Oh yes, because that has never been tried before." Cass narrowed her eyes. "Wait, has it?" A beat of silence. "Maybe," the key admitted. Cass turned to Doug. "Set a course for the nearest sun." Doug blinked. "Are we really sending it into a sun?" "Unless you have a better plan." Doug hesitated. Okay, but I just need to point out that whatever this thing is, it just broke out of an ancient prison and ate a bunch of Marines like they were appetizers. What if it's the kind of thing that gets stronger when you throw it into a sun?" Cass frowned. "Huxley?" Huxley was frantically running calculations. "Well, theoretically, if we combine the gravitational collapse of a star with the Omni-Key's containment function and a massive energy discharge," Cass held up a hand. "English, Hux. We'd need a really big explosion to make sure it doesn't survive." Boomer cracked her knuckles. "You had me at explosion." The ship hurtled toward the nearest star. The entity, realizing their intent, screamed. The sound tore through the ship's comms, a mix of rage and desperation. Cass gritted her teeth. "Doug, evasive maneuvers." "Boomer, prep the biggest boom we've got. Huxley, when I tell you, hit that containment function on the key." The inferno of the star loomed ahead. The entity lunged. Cass threw the Omni-Key forward. "Now!" Huxley activated the key. A brilliant energy field erupted, locking the creature in place. Boomer hit the detonator, and the void was consumed in fire. For a moment, Everything was silent. Then the shuttle emerged from the explosion, engines burning. Alarms blaring. Doug let out a hysterical laugh. "We're alive?" Boomer leaned back. "Hell yeah, we are." Cass exhaled, shaking her head. Then Bernie's voice crackled over the comms. "Reynolds." Cass groaned. "Oh, for fu—"